I'm kind of an unusual human rights activist. And the person that I'm going to introduce you to tonight, I would say is also an unusual human rights activist. So I belong to a club that most people wouldn't want to belong to. It's the club of people who have been chased by dictators with red notices. Red notice is an Interpol arrest warrant, and of course my first book was called Red Notice. I made a big deal about this, and I think over Twitter, this person from America, who I didn't know, named Enes Kanter, got in touch. He said, "I've got a red notice against me." And his red notice was issued because he had been critical of the Erdogan regime in Turkey, and Erdogan had been chasing him all over the world trying to arrest him. And that made it for a very inconvenient life because Enes is a professional basketball player and needed to travel to Canada and various other places. And we got to be friends over email and text and so on and so forth. And eventually he was able to solve his red notice problem. And one day he called me after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and he said, "I'd like to use my platform and my profile to highlight the terrible atrocities that are going on in Ukraine." And Enes had built up a platform of effectively being as a professional basketball player. Everybody was watching him in these games. He was playing for the Boston Celtics, and they would watch him on TV, and he had these white shoes, and he would paint different things on his white shoes. And so he started to, he became famous by saying, "Free Tibet, free the Uyghurs." And the whole world was watching. And guess who was getting upset? The Chinese, because they have such thin skin that they can't even handle a professional basketball player writing on his shoes, "Free Tibet, free the Uyghurs, free Hong Kong," etc. But he called me up and he said, "I want to do something for Russia." And so we ended up coming up with an idea of putting on one side Free Ukraine and on the other side Free Navalny. And he said, who should design these shoes? And it turns out that Sergei Magnitsky's son, Nikita, is an artist. He's training to be a professional artist. And so Nikita put together these beautiful shoes that said Free Ukraine, Free Navalny. And we had actually bought tickets for the game. I think it was the Celtics versus the New Jersey Nets. And all ready to go. Nikita and I were going to be there. Enes was going to wear them on the court. The whole world was going to be watching. It was going to be a big deal. And then 2 days before the game, Enes was fired from professional basketball. Not for what he was about to do with Russia, but for offending China. There's very few people in the world that are ready to risk their careers. And I should say this is not just a normal career. This is something that every tall young man, they won't want to be basketball players. They make millions of dollars. Everybody loves them. It's the best thing in the world to be a professional basketball player. Enes Kanter, freedom. He added freedom to his last name when he became an American citizen. Enes Kanter, freedom, was ready to risk all of that glory, all of that money for his principles. And that is something that we need to applaud and award. And so I'm very proud, Enes Kanter Freedom, to award you the Outstanding Human Rights Activist.
is always a problem for me. I need to adjust this. It's way better. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much. Thank you, Bill, for your friendship, for your support, and for your leadership, because you've been such a good friend and a good mentor for me throughout the years. And thank you, my good friend Thor, and thank you, everybody. Thank you from Madam Magnitsky. But I just want to, start with, I'm honored and humbled to be here. I remember my whole life, all I cared about was playing basketball and having fun with my teammates. That was just my childhood dream to become an NBA player. My activism actually started back in 2013. I think this is just, okay. 2013, for the first time, there was a big corruption scandal happened in Turkey. And, like Mr. Browder mentioned, President Erdogan and some of his family members were involved in it. And that was the first time I said something, because he was going around and shutting down media outlets and putting innocent journalists in a jail, whoever wrote about this scandal. And as a basketball player, I literally put a very simple tweet out there. And it became a conversation because of the NBA platform. And I was like, even one little simple tweet can affect this much. From now on, I'm going to start paying attention about what's going on in my country more. So I started to study. My teammates were going out to bars and clubs. I was going back home and started to study about what's going on. And obviously, the things that I talk about affected me and my family. When you fight against a government like Turkey, they're going to do everything they can to silence you. My dad was a scientist, and he got fired from his job. My sister was going to a medical school for 6 years. She still cannot find a job. I think the saddest one was my little brother, because he was playing basketball and he wanted to be like his big brother and become an NBA player, but he was getting kicked out on every team because of the same last name. My family was getting affected so much, they had to put a statement out there publicly and said, we are disowning Enes. And I remember going to a practice that day. It was definitely one of the toughest days in my life. And then after that, Turkish government didn't believe that. They came to my house and they took every electronics away, phones, computers, laptops, iPads, because they wanted to see if I am still in contact with my family or not, but they couldn't find no evidence, but they still took my dad in jail for a while. And then right after that, obviously, like he mentioned, they put my name on Interpol list and my passport was revoked. But all these things were happening. I remember just last summer, I was doing a basketball camp in New York, and I was taking a picture with these kids one by one, and I took a picture with this kid, and his parents called me out in front of everybody and said, how can you call yourself a human rights activist when your Muslim brothers and sisters are getting tortured and raped every day in concentration camps in China? And I'm still smiling for the camera. And I turned around to that parent. I was like, I promise I'm going to get back to you. So I canceled everything that day. I went back to my hotel. I started to study about what's going on. And what I, read that day was unbelievable. But obviously on the internet, you can find all kind of news. But I wanted to, fact check it. I called my manager. I was like, hey, listen, I need you to find me a concentration camp survivor where I can sit down and talk to, which he found. It was a woman. We sit down and had a 1-hour conversation, and she was telling me about I don't want to go into too much details, but the torture methods. She was telling me about the gang raping. She was telling me about all the sterilization and abortion and organ harvesting. I was like, I don't care how much money is involved, how much business involved, or whatever they can offer me. This is bigger than basketball, So I promised. I asked her at the end of our conversation, I was like, how can I help you? She said, I'm good. I don't need you to help me. And I was like, then why do we have this conversation? She's like, I'm in America. I feel safe here. I can eat whatever I want, go wherever I want, but there are 3 million people in concentration camps getting tortured and raped every day. Help those people. So at that moment, I promised myself, I was like, whatever it takes, I'm going to help those people. I wanted to do it in a very unique way. I mean, the shoes that you guys have seen, whenever I was a kid, whenever I watched an NBA game, the first thing I was looking was the shoes. What color, what brand, if they're comfortable. The next day I was waking up and telling my dad, please buy those shoes for me. So I come up with this idea, we come up with this idea with Human Rights Foundation. I was like, let's reach out to these artists around the world who've been oppressed by their government, and let's let's give them this project that where they can put all the struggles, everything on the shoes, and we go out there and play. And there's no rule against it in NBA. So we did that, and right before the game, my first game, right before the game, there was a minute left, and two gentlemen came from the NBA and said, take those shoes off. And I was very shocked. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you cannot wear those shoes because you've been getting so much attention by internationally. And it was the perfect moment because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test, right? So I closed my eyes. I'm like, okay, there are 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech. I was like, no, I'm not taking them off. It was the funniest thing. So that game, that halftime, right? Halftime, I played 0 minutes and a half in the first half. And the first half, I went back to my locker room. I looked at my phone, there was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the one that my manager sent me. He said, every Celtics game is banned in China. It literally took China for 24 minutes, first half, for the first quarter, 12 minutes, and second quarter, 12 minutes, 24 minutes to ban every Celtics game in television. I was like, well, that clearly shows my point, you know? So that game, I played 0 minutes, and right after the game, one of my teammates woke up to me and said, you know this is your last year in NBA, right? Have fun with it, smile, because you're not going to get another contract after this. And I was very shocked. I was like, wow, I talk about human rights, but just because I was standing up for those innocent people, they were telling me that they were going to just let me go. And that happened. You know, in February, I got let go from my job, and right after I got let go, I've been playing in the NBA for 11 years. I got hundreds of teammates, hundreds of coaches and stuff. I called them for support, and none of them answered me. I used to call them my brothers. Not one of them answered me because they were scared of too much of losing endorsement deals, shoe sales, jersey sales. They wanted to get another contract, and that broke my heart. Since today, you know, they have not answered me yet. But I mean, with that being said, so the last 8-9 months has been very, very lonely. You know, I talk about the problems were happening in China. I pretty much lost my career. I talk about the problems were happening in Turkey. Last time I saw my family was 9 years ago. But then I come to these kind of events. You know, I used to pray every night. I was like, God, please let me see my family one more time, you know, because I haven't seen them for 9 years. But then I come to these kind of events and I see so many people who are sharing my stories, who are having the same struggles. I was like, well, God has answered my calls. You know, I just see you guys as my family because you guys are, whatever I'm going through, I can see that in your eyes too, and your support means so much to me. So that's why, you know, not just this award, but just being here with you guys and learning and, you know, sharing your stories, it just meant a lot to me. So with that being said, thank you guys so much. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you. Thank you.